Hello everyone and welcome to Azam Sharp YouTube channel. So we're going to continue writing good test for our SwiftUI application. And in the last video, I shown you this test, which is test throw duplicate name exception when saving budget with same name. So that's the actual domain rule business logic that you're checking. So that's why it's a good test. It does provide the return on your investment. So let's go ahead and write some other test. Well, our next test will be the test calculate budget expenses total. All right. Now, when we read this test, we can already see that expenses, what is that? Because we don't really have any expenses, right? So how can we calculate the expenses when we're not even considering expenses? So what I'm going to do is, and by the way, this is not TDD, so I'm not really doing TDD in this case because the domain is not complicated enough for me to do TDD. When the domain is complicated, when the business rules are complicated, then TDD can definitely help. But in this case, it's pretty straightforward. So basically what we want to do is we want to add another model which will represent an expense. An expense can be anything, right? If you have budget, which is groceries, in the groceries, you can have expense like milk, bread, eggs, things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and add some code for the expense. We can take a look at it. So this is the expense. You can see it has a name, expense has a price and a quantity. So maybe instead of one ice cream, I'm buying 2 ice cream or multiple ice creams. And it has a relationship with the budget. So an expense will belong to a budget. So if I go back to the budget, I can go ahead and add that relationship right there. So now the budget can have multiple expenses and an expense can belong to the budget. All right. Let's go back to our test. So now we have expense. And again, we're going to start with setting up our container and our context. These things can be done in a setup, which we'll do later on. And I'm going to go ahead and decorate this with main actor. I'll create a budget and then I'll save the budget. We'll create a budget, we'll save the budget. Let's go ahead and say throws also over here because it can throw an exception. Next, I'm going to create expenses. A couple of different expenses is fine. So I'm going to create an array of expenses using our new class expense. Each expense has a name, price, and quantity. Then we can say budget.expenses equals to expenses. All right. And what we are asserting now over here, assert equal, we are asserting that the total for the expenses, if I say budget.spent, spent is the property that we need to add, budget.spent should be equal to $59. But we don't really have a spend property. So let's go back to our budget, and in the budget, we will add the spend property. So I'm going to go over here and add a property called spent. It's going to return as double. And to calculate the expenses, I can go through the expenses using the reduce array helper, reduce function. It's going to reduce everything to one single thing. I'll call it result. We'll get the expense and result plus expense dot price. So this will be my first implementation. All right. And let's go back to our code. Now we do have the spend property, so we can run this. Let's go ahead and run this. Oops, it's actually failing. I guess it's still not able to see this property, which is kind of weird. Oh, it said spend. It's not spend. So let's go ahead and change the property name to spent. I don't want to call it like that. Spent. Great. And let's go ahead and run this. Now, basically what I'm saying is that all of these expenses that I've added, they should total up to be $59. And that's what we're doing. We're adding all the expenses and we are returning the spend portion or the spend property that we just added right here. It's actually totaling up all the expenses using the reduce function, and it just creates this running total plus expense.price. So let's go ahead and see that if this test passes or fails. So our test is failing, as you can see, and the error is 59 is not equal to 9.5. So this means that our spent, the total over here, the spent is 9.5, while we were expecting it to be 59. So how exactly were we expecting it to be 59? Let's go ahead and do the total. So you have milk, which is $4.50, so $4.50, but you bought 2 milk cartons, so it's 2. And then bread is $5, but you bought 10. So 10 multiplied by 5 is 50. And then you multiply this, and then you get the result. And then you add them together, it's 59. All right. So what exactly are we doing that is not correct? Let's go to the budget. Now looking at this spend property, we can see that we didn't really account for the quantity. So we will have to make sure that we are adding the quantity. So expense.quantity. And that can be one of the things that you may leave behind, because anytime you do this kind of calculation, it's a good idea to write a test for it. Not because it is complicated or simple, but because there is a possibility that you can actually mess up this stuff, right? Just like I did. All right. So any kind of these kind of calculations, it's usually a good idea to write a test for it so that we know that it's working correctly. And now you can see our test is passing. So that's great. Now the other thing is we can also write a very simple test for the remaining budget. Very, very simple test. Let's go ahead and write a test. Test, calculate budget remaining total. And this can throws, and also this will be on the main actor. We're going to do a lot of stuff that we have already done in the previous test. There we go. And now we are expecting that the remaining means whatever is left in the budget will be $441. But now the problem is, well, we don't really have a remaining property on the budget. So let's go to the budget and add the remaining property. So what will be the remaining property looks like? Remaining, we have the limit minus spent, right? So whatever the limit is, 500 minus however much you spent, that will be the remaining. So now we can go over here and run this test also. And this also passes, right? So now we have written 2 tests that are good tests because they are testing the business logic, the business rules, the calculation, the algorithm, and it provides a return on our investment, the time investment that we are putting to create these tests. All right. So in the next lecture, I'll be talking about how to reformat or how to refactor this so that we have a little bit more cleaner test, because this is code, and this is the code that you're going to check in to your repository. So anytime you check in code to your repository, you have to make sure that it is nice and clean. So we're going to learn about that in the next lecture. If you like this video and want to support my channel, then the best way would be to check out my courses on my Teachable website. I just published a brand new course. It's called SwiftUI Architecture, Patterns, and Best Practices. I've been working on this course for a number of years. So all the things that I've learned about SwiftUI, the architecture, and MVVM, MV, container pattern. So I discuss all of that in this course. So let's go ahead and take a look at, you can take a look at the promo video, obviously, and let's look at the content. You can see MVVM, the problems and limitations of MVVM, migrating from MVVM to MV, bounded context. So these are important concepts when you're doing a domain-driven design. Bounded context stores communication, nested observable, and then SwiftUI views, which are not really views, but the declaration of the views, validation, navigation, and then a huge section on testing. All right. So you can check this course out. This course is available at $149, or you can subscribe to Azam Sharp Pro membership, and you get this course for $25 a month plus all the other courses. So if you go to the actual Teachable website, here we go. You get a lot of stuff with $25 a month. You get 130 plus hours, and then 50% off on the workshop, monthly Q&A. We just ended our Q&A like yesterday, and you get all of these courses. So you can see this is a huge list of courses, one of the largest knowledge-based content that is available online for iOS developers. All right, so you can check out all of these courses for one monthly fee. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much. And please share it with your colleagues, your friends. I'm sure they're going to enjoy it too.